live to YouTube and via the Council's website. The meeting is also being recorded for the purposes of the minutes. I have been advised that the live stream is now up and running. If for any reason the public can no longer hear or see the meeting over the live stream, we will adjourn until the connection has been re-established. Can I ask the Governance Officer to explain the procedure of the meeting and to confirm the members and officers present?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm with Martin Derbyshire, has the live feed now started? Right, thank you. Yes, Chair, in terms of the membership today, and apologies if I miss anyone off, we have Councillor Ancliffe, yourself, Councillor Armitage, Councillor Barker, Councillor K-Bone, Councillor P-Bone, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Cornwell, Councillor Cupid, Councillor Dale, Councillor Dayton, Councillor Emmons, Councillor Angelique Foster, Councillor Mark Foster, Councillor Jay Funnell, Councillor Hall, Councillor Hancock, Councillor Hartshorn, Councillor Hill, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Huckabee, Councillor Hutchinson, Councillor Jones, Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Kerry, Councillor Lewis, Councillor Liggett, Councillor Lilly, Councillor Morley, Councillor Parkin, Councillor Pickering, Councillor Potts, Councillor Powell, Councillor Reader, Councillor Rennick, Councillor Ridgway, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Ruff, Councillor Shipman, Councillor Tate, Councillor Thacker, and Councillor Welton. Are there any other members here who have not called out?
Councillor Gomez, Bruno.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Clough as well.
Councillor Whitehead.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Winley.
And Councillor Winley.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Birkin.
Councillor Jones.
Okay, yes, we've got you down.
Thank you.
Okay, in terms of the officer support today, well, obviously, I'm clerk to the meeting, Alan Marr, but the principal officers who will be supporting you will be Lee Hicken, the Joint Director of Corporate Resources and the Head of Paid Service, Jill Callingham, Director of Growth and Economic Development, Karen Hansen, Joint Director of Environment and Enforcement, Jane Dethick, Head of Finance and Resources, and Sarah Sternberg, Joint Head of Corporate Governance and Monitoring Officer. The process for the meeting, or the procedure for the meeting, will be very similar to your previous council meetings held virtually. First of all, can members keep their cameras on throughout the meeting and observe the rules of procedure and standing orders. To indicate that you wish to speak, please raise your hands or write "speak" in the chat function. Keep your microphone off until you're invited to speak. If you're having any technical issues, then please let one of the governance team know, and there'll be various members of the governance team who'll be here to support you today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any apologies?
Well, we've received an apology from Councillor B. Wright, Chair.
Chair, I believe Councillor Elliott has also messaged to try and get onto the meeting, but he's struggling. So if a member of the governance team could please send him resend him the link, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Jane Barry. Did you get Jane Barry's, Alan?
Jane Barry, I'll put that in now. Is that in terms of apologies, members? No further apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Members of interest should have declared them to the governance manager in advance of the meeting. However, I will ask again, can members please indicate if they have any interest to declare?
None have been received, Chair.
Can we approve the minutes of the last meeting as true and an accurate record? You want to proposing them?
Is that Councillor Barker proposing? No, I think Councillor Barker wishes to make a point.
Yeah, I just want, do you want to move them first, Alex and thingy, or which way around is it?
I'm happy to move them. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
And a seconder, please.
I'll second, Chair.
We are now going to commence voting.
Sorry, can I just
sorry.
make a point on the minutes? Sorry. Our group, we don't really want to agree to these minutes because I know it's a moot point, but councillor was at that meeting and he was invited to that meeting and he did vote at that meeting, and his attendance is not recorded or his apologies are anywhere to be seen. Just because his name's not in those minutes, we won't be agreeing to them. Thank you.
Bernard. Any other speakers?
Can I ask, just following that point, Chair, why has his name been removed if he was there and he was voting?
Sarah. Sorry, I hope I'm not too close to this. Mr. Hunt ceased to be a member of the council through non-attendance under Section 85 of the Local Government Act. And although he was physically at the meeting, he was no longer a councillor, so he wouldn't be recorded as a councillor.
Yeah, we'll revisit that in a minute, if that's okay, Sarah, on the next item. Cheers, thank you.
We are now going to commence voting. The Governance Officer will issue a poll now. There's 4. Oh, sorry, can't see.
Hi, sorry, it's Councillor Roger Hall. Point of order, please. Has the poll been sent to everybody? Because people that weren't at the meeting would not be able to vote. Am I correct in understand? Is that my correct understanding?
No, Chair. Members who were not at the previous meeting are still able to actually vote on the minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Can we add 2 from the chamber, 4, please?
Yeah, okay, that makes 27 votes for, so that's carried.
I think Councillor Birkin wishes to speak.
Yes, Councillor Birkin.
Thank you, Chair. I find the answer that you just gave to Councillor Hall a bit confusing. How can somebody who wasn't present at the meeting vote to accept the minutes of that meeting as a true record? There's a bit of an oxymoron type of thing in there, surely to goodness.
Well, it's certainly always been custom and practice within local government that members can approve the minutes of a previous meeting. So I'm really just going on the basis of the precedent.
It is the normal, sorry, it's Sarah Sternberg, monitoring officer. It is normal to allow everybody to vote in the on the minutes. It's different from moving and seconding. And I will also add that in these days of virtual meetings, somebody might not have been there, but might have been watching.
Councillor Armitage.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't able to vote. I don't know why. It didn't come up on my screen.
Alan, is there a problem with polls?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair. Amy, are there any issues?
No, it didn't look like it. 42 votes were made for it, so we can add yours on, Councillor Armitage, on top of that if you'd like us to.
Yes, I would, and I would vote for.
Thank you, colleagues. Last week, I marked Amnesty Day with a 2-minute silence and laid a wreath here at Mill Lane. I was joined by Councillor Thacker as Vice Chair and Armed Forces Champion, as well as Councillor Dale as Leader of the Council. On this important day, we pause to reflect and mark the end of the First World War and to remember the sacrifice made by so many in conflicts over the last 100 years. I invite Councillor Dale to give the leaders' announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by saying a huge thank you to the amazing and hardworking staff at North East Derbyshire District Council for absolutely everything that they've been doing over the past few weeks in adapting to the recent changes in restrictions and the impact of increased COVID rates in North East Derbyshire. They remain an absolute credit to this organisation, and the resilience and adaptability they've shown has been truly excellent. And in saying this, I'd also like to echo the same sentiments to staff from Ricknold Homes, who continue to work very closely with us. I'm also very grateful to members from across the political spectrum for the support they've shown to the council at this very challenging time. Our Viper meetings continue to be very productive, and I welcome the input from all those around the table to help ensure that we are doing all we can to support our residents and businesses to respond to this pandemic. On the subject of businesses, I know that many of us will be receiving inquiries about support grants from local businesses, and I'm pleased to inform you that finance officers are working extremely hard to get the 3 different grant schemes established, and they are hoping to go live very soon. As you'll all know, a few weeks ago, North East Derbyshire was a significant cause for concern with the highest and most rapidly rising COVID rates in the county. Decisive action was taken to increase the level of restrictions in our area on the 15th of October. Now, clearly, decisions of this nature, where there is an obvious impact on businesses, the local economy, and the way that people live their lives, are never easy. But we are now beginning to see some glimmers of light and cases levelling off in North East Derbyshire ahead of several other areas of the county. But we absolutely must not be complacent, and we need to continue to follow the national restrictions very closely and collectively all do our bit to get back on top of this dreadful virus. While coronavirus continues to disrupt our way of life, it's absolutely essential that we don't let it disrupt our progress in achieving our ambitions for the council and this district. I'm pleased that despite the challenges we face, we're continuing to deliver quality services to the people of North East Derbyshire. To pick out just a few highlights from the past few months, I'm really pleased that we've secured a Green Homes grant from the government worth £575,000 to help us to refurbish 110 homes in Mickley as part of a wider £3 million investment programme. The funding will be used to add insulation to the properties, reducing their carbon footprint and the cost of energy bills for our residents. On that note, work is also progressing on our Thanks a Ton campaign, which we'll be launching in January to encourage residents to help do their bit in reducing our district's carbon emissions. Last month, together with the Claycross Town Board, we submitted the Town Investment Plan to government as our ambitious bid for up to £25 million to transform the prospects of this community. We've also hit the ground running with delivering the plan, having received an early grant of £500,000 to kickstart some of the projects. And officers will officers will cover the plan in more detail during the presentation later on in the agenda. And finally, I'm very pleased that Cabinet has recently given approval to invest in both our planning and environmental health services. This includes expanding our planning enforcement team and recruiting conservation and arboricultural expertise. And in environmental health, investing in a special COVID support team and additional officers to support residents and businesses through this pandemic. Before I finish, Chair, I would just like to also inform members that as our next full council meeting is not until February, and due to some additional items of business that will need approval, it may be necessary to host an additional full council meeting in mid-December or early January. A date hasn't yet been set, but assuming that it is required, governance will contact members as soon as possible to provide more details. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. I can confirm that no public questions have been submitted, so we shall move on to the next item.
Chair, am I permitted to ask the leader a couple of questions, if that's all right?
Councillor Dale, are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to try and answer any of Councillor Ridgway's questions.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you're talking about your VIPA meetings. Are you given updates on the actual figures of the people in North East Derbyshire who have contracted COVID-19 and things like that, and the amount of deaths? Because I've got the figures in front of me if you haven't. And also, just on the side, I noticed that car parking looks as if it's going to be reinstigated again at the hospitals. And I think I would like, as leader of you as leader of this council, to wholeheartedly go against that for the time being. Maybe write a letter to whoever deals with it, the hospitals, because like me, we're going in there dealing with critical care, you know, ITU, HDU people with COVID-19, and to think that we have to pay to park to save people's lives at this particular time, I think is quite difficult. So I'm just asking on the side if you could help in that, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ridgway. In answer to the first question, yes, I attend the local outbreak engagement board meetings and do get some oversight of the figures. Obviously, there is always a degree of lag in the figures of a few days, as we know. But the latest meeting I attended was late last week, and it was clear from the evidence of the past couple of weeks that there is a levelling off that we aren't seeing in some other areas that didn't move to tier 2. So as I say, it's glimmers of light. We are by no means there yet in terms of the work that we need to do, and we absolutely all must be not be complacent in any way about the work that there is still to do to bring down rates in the district. But I think it is important that we acknowledge that the decision to move to tier 2, I believe, was the right one. And not an easy decision, as I say, but I do believe it was the right one and has helped us to move in the right sort of direction. The second point around hospital parking, absolutely more than happy to pick that up with you outside the meeting, Councillor Ridgway, and see if we can lend support from the district to any lobbying on that issue.
Thank you.
I'll drop you a line after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note that an updated Appendix 2 was circulated in the supplementary pack. I now invite the monitoring officer to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is item 7, the appointments to committees and advisory groups. This is a standard report brought before members when the need arises to reconsider proportionality on committees when there is a change in political balance. Appendix 1 is the agreed best fit for the authority as agreed at annual council, with one change as a result of the proportionality change. This change is to reduce the number of Labour members on Standards Committee by 1, and this would remain as a vacancy until the proportionality is considered again after a by-election or a shift in political balance for any reason. Appendix 2, as the Chair said in the supplementary pack, is the appointments to committees agreed at annual council, amended by council at a later meeting, and brought again today to effect the change to standards committee. No other amendments are suggested at this stage. However, this is an opportunity to make any changes that political groups wish.
Someone to propose the recommended action?
I'm happy to propose, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I think Councillor Armitage is indicating.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on this item?
Oh, I've got my hand up, Chair. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, Councillor Barker
And me, Chair.
Councillor Barker.
and Councillor Reader.
Thanks, Chair. Am I on? Thanks, Sarah, for that. As alluded to earlier, we are really disappointed that we've arrived at this situation. I were hoping that that we wouldn't have to go through this process. I think most people know Clive, Councillor Hunt, and the situation he's been through. He's had severe medical problems, and again, it's been a funny period. We've had COVID, and we've had one or two other things happen, you know, in this period. I was advised, and I've got other people who think that Clive his time was in until October this year. I was told by governance people on several occasions that Clive was still okay. There is a contentious thing that it maybe he wasn't, but I think the understanding was he were until October. Again, going back, we've had the COVID thing that's made it difficult for everybody. In fact, we had a council meeting cancelled. Clive was invited to the meeting, as we've alluded to, in September. He wasn't told he couldn't come to that meeting. He sat through all that meeting. So I assume that everybody, all the governance people, assumed that he was still okay to be at that meeting. And again, it's a disappointing situation, and I know Clive's upset about it and one thing or another, and we could put the blame on him. He should have kept a check, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. This doesn't. And I'd ask that we can revisit that decision. And I know legally that there might be an issue with that, and I'm sure Sarah will tell us that. But there are some questions that still need to be asked. There's several questions been raised on a different level that have not been answered yet, and I'd like at this point to ask you to go back and revisit that if there's any chance, because there can't be election till next May anyway. It's just a request, and I'd be interested to see what Sarah's got to say on that. You know, the legalities. And again, I just find it difficult, especially if people that know Clive. Well, thanks anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Sarah Sternberg, Monitoring Officer. Councillor Barker actually alluded to it in what he's just said. It's not a decision, it is the effect of the law. Section 85 Local Government Act means that if there's non-attendance, the member ceases to be a member. That's not a decision, that's just a fact. In terms of misunderstandings and what people may or may not have been told, Councillor Barker, I'll give you a ring and we'll have a discussion about that and try to find out what happened, but that would not affect the position in law.
Thank you. Councillor Reader.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo pretty much what Councillor Barker said. And again, Sarah, I'm very disappointed with that response. You know, at some point, Councillor Hunt should have been contacted. He was really ill. We're in an unprecedented time of COVID. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are around that with coronavirus. I know that a number of councils have sort of waived that kind of rule, you know, in terms of the coronavirus, because, you know, not all councils can meet. So I would like some more clarity really on how that decision was made, who made that decision, where did it come from, and just get some more clarity for our group really.
Sarah Sternberg. As I said previously, it was no decision, it is the operation of the law. If there's been non-attendance, the member ceases to be a member. However, I also did say that I would contact Councillor Barker as leader of the Labour group to talk about what he has and has not been told along the way. And that is a separate issue, and it would not go to whether or not the member ceases to be a member. It would only go to how it's been dealt with. So to sum up, it's not a decision, so it can't be revisited as a decision. It is the operation of the law.
Okay, Sarah, it's still disappointing. I think there is a bit of a grey area there, but we'll have a talk about it, and that's it. Point made.
Chair, I'd like to make a point. Hello.
We can't hear you.
Chair.
Councillor Como.
Sorry, who's speaking?
I believe Councillor Pickering's speaking.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you. The point I'd like to make, yes, as Sarah says, it is an application of the law, but it seems that there's some latitude in that elected members in this chamber can vary that, because on both sides, from Conservative members and from Clive's point of view, we've approved 6-month dispensations, not 3 months, and Clive's original one was for 6 months. And that's the good faith that we've operated in. And suddenly, without any consultation, it's now been determined that the law says 3 months, and Clive's now been excluded from this council. Well, that 3 months was up when he was invited as a councillor to come to the last meeting. He was accepted into that meeting as a councillor. His name's been now deliberately missed off the attendance, and he voted as a councillor. So there is some latitude in that law, in that this chamber can vote on that. And I can't remember voting that Clive's last period of absence was only 3 months, because I would have been moving in this chamber that it'd be 6 months. And I think I would have got a lot of support from all sides in this chamber for Clive to have a 6-month dispensation. So it might be that you're applying the law, but where there are grey areas in the law can be changed or determined by the elected members, we should be looking at that or investigating why that's not being done in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Cornwell.
Yes, I want to reiterate what Steve just said. I think an investigation needs to be happening. If a decision has been made and the law is the law, okay. But he came to a previous meeting and he voted at that meeting. At that point, the law should have been applied and it wasn't. So nobody informed him, nobody informed the leader. It just happened in the background at a very awkward time, i.e. when we were trying to have an emergency meeting. So I suspect something happened and somebody did some looking and realised that he may not be allowed to attend. So I really would like an investigation on this issue.
Sarah Sternberg. It is ultimately the member's responsibility to ensure that they attend within 6 months. So it's, as I say, their responsibility. It's not something we need or should, under the legislation, tell them about. I've offered to talk to Councillor Barker about what happened and who said what, where and when in terms of the emails that were flying around, but that wouldn't affect the legal position either. Nothing can be done under the legislation in retrospect. Once the member ceases to have attended for 6 months, that is it. You can't do, even you as members cannot do anything. It is just the legal position. But as I said, I've offered to talk to Councillor Barker about the position and about what was said.
Can I just say, he was ill. He was not in a position where he could fight his case. He was unwell, and therefore couldn't contact you and couldn't discuss it.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I would particularly like to raise my concerns here. I recall voting to approve a dispensation for Councillor Hunt for 6 months. I certainly don't recall voting one for 3 months. And I don't think this should be a private conversation with Councillor Barker, to be perfectly truthful. This needs to be a full report to this council as to how Councillor Hunt was here, as to how he was voting, and then all of a sudden we're told he's no longer a councillor. Somewhere along the lines behind the scenes, Section 85 has been applied, and I respect what the monitoring officer is saying, that it is a matter of legality, but we haven't applied that law properly if we've allowed him to vote in the first place, and we need a proper account to this council, not just a private discussion with Councillor Barker. No disrespect to either person involved in that.
Councillor Ridgway.
Yes, I totally agree with everything that everybody said. And if I recall, I'm sure before we have actually extended beyond 6 months for people to, have a 6 month extension and then another 6 month extension. And I'm sure at some time we should have had, or, the monitoring officer or somebody should have asked us to look at that. So I think it's been very ill managed, and I think an investigation does need to be looked at. And if it was happening on the other side of the table, I would be sitting here saying the same thing. It applies to both sides of the table, both political parties, and I think something needs to be looked at. As I say, I know that we have extended dispensation for people for sickness longer than 6 months before, so I think it needs to be looked at.
Caroline.
Can you see me? I'm sat here waving my hand like a fool.
It's Councillor Hill.
Councillor Hill.
Can I speak now? Right.
Yes,
can I say, and I say this to the leader and hope he can listen and do something. What a disgusting way to treat a councillor that was seriously ill, that he could not answer any questions from governance about the time he was off or anything. We was led to understand that Councillor Hunt was okay for another 6 months. And if that's not the case, they should have stopped him immediately he came to that meeting and said, sorry, Councillor Hunt, you are no longer a councillor and you will have to leave. That didn't happen. Now, but I don't care in governance who's to blame for this, but somebody is to blame. And I just think what an appalling way to treat a man that was seriously ill. We would not do it to any other councillor, whichever party they are. And we've done it in the past. We've extended and extended, not because the councillor was ill, because one member of their family was ill. It's still the same thing. I must ask Councillor Dale to take a look at this and see what's gone wrong here, because something has, and it needs applying and it needs putting right.
Councillor Renwick.
Yeah, I'd just like to add my support to any investigation report coming to either standards or to this council, if not just to rule out any political interference from the Conservative group. Councillor Hunt is actually a member of the parish council, and we keep good track of his his right to vote, his right to be on that council. So just for avoidance of any doubt, there's nothing political going on here. I'd like that also to be included in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dale. Sorry.
Just to echo what Councillor Rennick has said there, I absolutely agree. I think I've known Clive for quite a few years. He is a lovely chap, and it's very sad that he's been unwell. As far as I am concerned, and the information I have received is that unfortunately his term of office expired due to non-attendance, and that's despite some dispensations that were that were applied. It wasn't possible to apply a retrospective dispensation, but I'm very happy to discuss with Sarah and other members and try and get to the bottom of what happened. But that's just my understanding. As Councillor Rennick says, it's nothing to do with me. It's a function of the monitoring officer to deal with these matters. But happy to look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. I mean, just looking at the lines of what the lead has just said, and looking for retrospective ruling on this, to ask Sarah in respect of the law and how it's stated. I would imagine. I mean, laws come and go. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and they change because of that. And I'm just wondering, in this sort of instance, with the exceptional circumstances, particularly with the nature of some of the illness that Clive's been suffering, and the slowdown in treatment in those areas, of course, it does offer some really exceptional circumstances. And I'm wondering if there is some provision of appeal with the law in respect of this, so that we can get to the bottom of this and be fair to any one of us who could come across that same problem at any time in our life. Not only us, but members of our family, particularly in a situation that we find ourselves in now with regards to COVID.
Thank you. Councillor Birkin.
Thank you, Chair. We seem to be missing the very serious and valid point that I think Councillor Hancock made, that there seems to be no recollection, I certainly don't, as well as Councillor Hancock, so that's two of us, of the decision to extend Councillor Hunt's absence by a further 3 months, when we had agreed, and I remember that coming to the council, but I don't think there was any instance where we were asked to extend that by a further amount, be it 3 months or 6 months. I think, as I said, that's a very valid point that Councillor Hancock's made, and we seem to be glossing over that. Can we have some information as to when the 3 months started, and if it was brought to council, and if not, which a couple of us seem to remember, then why it wasn't, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to echo the need for an investigation. If an ex-councillor was able to vote in a meeting, that would make them a member of the public. So I'd be interested to know how governance allowed that to happen.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Sternberg. In relation to Councillor Lilly's point about retrospective action, because that's essentially what he's asking for, it is quite specific in the legislation that you have to do it before the end of the term of office of the member, so before the dispensation comes to an end. So no, in practical terms, we can't do anything after the event. In terms of the question about this being brought to members, we put through a lot of emergency, well, not a lot, a number of emergency powers at the start of the first lockdown to ensure that business could carry on. I'm not sure, I haven't got it at my fingertips or here, but I believe that one of those delegations related to the Section 85. That would be part of what I'd look at when I was talking to Councillors Barker and Dale. So I'd bring that to them. Thanks, Chair.
We will now move to the vote. I will ask the Governance Officer to issue the poll.
Sorry, what we're voting on?
The acceptance of the appointment.
We're at this point, because of the nature, and I accept what Sarah said, but I know there's some sort of legal challenges happening at the time that we're not volunteering a name at this juncture.
Yes, the report is about there being a vacancy and therefore the removal of one Labour member from the Standards Committee in consequence. It's not about putting forward a name, it's about withdrawing somebody.
Well, in that, I mean, at this juncture, we still think Clive's got a chance of staying on, so we're not remove. We won't vote for that. This then.
Councillor Birkin's indicating, Chair.
Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if we can actually get commitment from the monitoring officer that an investigation will happen, because I know everyone's calling for one here, but I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be kicked into long grass as of 1 minute past now, and we're never going to hear about it again. Can we actually get a commitment that that will happen, and then that a report will be brought back to council so we know who made the decisions, under what delegated powers those decisions were made, and what has been communicated to Councillor Barker? Because if someone has actually said to Councillor Barker that Councillor Hunt's dispensation was ongoing still and for to a certain date, then that's a serious failure, and that needs to be addressed, because that has resulted in taxpayers wasting money here, because we're going to have a by-election. It's going to cost resource to put this on, and ultimately someone in the governance team has passed council. Well, I'm going on what Councillor Block has told me, has given him some information that he deems is incorrect, and I think that that needs to be addressed. So can we actually get confirmation that that will happen, will come back to council, and we can actually look at this properly? Otherwise, we're not actually doing anything, are we? And this whole debate's worthless.
Thank you.
Sarah Sternberg. I will be looking at this, and I will look through all the details of what was sent to whom and by whom and what decisions were made. And I will discuss that with Councillors Barker and Dale. But if you want a report back to council, I suggest you add it to the recommendations. But I will be looking at it very seriously. It won't be forgotten 1 minute after this meeting.
Can I move that we add that to the recommendations of this report then, please, Chair?
I would second that, Chair.
Are the existing mover and seconder happy with that as an amendment?
Can we go to the vote then, please, now?
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Can we just be clear what we're voting on here?
Councillor Birkin, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
Sorry, Chair. No, it's a point of information. From I think what Ms Sternberg just said, the power of delegation for the continuance or not of one of our fellow councillors was left to our officers. Is that right? I would say not.
One of the things I will check, but that was in the very early days before virtual meetings were up and running. We did it in March. I think that's the case, but that's what I will be checking.
Can you check who gave you those powers then? Because I would have thought that any councillor sitting here would have been very, very reluctant to give away such powers, or should have been very, very reluctant to give away such powers. No disrespect to you as an officer, but because it puts you as an officer in a very, very, very difficult position, as we are now finding. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just say, this was a very difficult time when there were no meetings of members, and we wanted to ensure there was a safeguard for members on this particular provision. So in the unusual circumstances we had in March and April, that was when it was introduced, if it was there. I have a fallible memory. I may be wrong.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, Chair, that's a fantastic safeguard that was built in for officers and members then.
Can we vote now on the amendment?
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, the amendment then is to retain the 3 recommendations which are in the report, plus with a final additional recommendation that there should be an investigation in the matter of Clive Hunt and his membership of the council. Is that the essence of it?
Yeah, and the decisions taken, obviously, leading up to that point.
Thank you. Councillor Armitage.
I would have thought that Councillor Dale ought to just come back as he put the motion forward to start with, if he agrees with the amendment.
Yeah.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, I mean, if in the interest of speeding things up, I'm happy for the amendment. If that saves us having to vote on the amendment and then the original motion, I'm happy for the investigation to be brought back to council. If Councillor Armitage is as well as the seconder.
Yes, I agree with you.
Second, right.
You can take that
Co-
as the amendment with 1 to 4.
Yeah. Can we now vote? Can we now vote on the suspension?
Chair, if I may help, you're being asked to vote on the 3 recommendations in the report, plus the additional one that a report is an investigation done and then reported back to council. I think we're going to do this by poll, electronic poll.
Just launch the poll now. It should be available for you to vote.
Hello, can I speak? Sorry, I'm very confused. Shouldn't we be voting just on the amendment? And then if the amendment falls or gets carried, we can then vote on the original.
Yeah, if I might clarify, the mover and seconder of the main motion agreed to add that, so we're just going to vote on the main motion, including that amendment.
Okay, Chair, I've ended the polling and it's 39 votes for, so that's been carried.
Sorry, Amy, can I add 2 from the chamber, please?
Yes, of course, sorry, yes. So that's 41 votes for, Chair.
Chair, there was a lot of confusion in respect of that, and people like myself and Councillor Cornwall weren't really actually sure what we were voting on or against or whatever. I understood that under the situation that we'd be voting for the amendment, voting on the amendment, and that's the usual way things go. The amendment is moved and seconded and voted on. If it falls or whatever, then we proceed in the same fashion, understanding orders. Either the amendment is carried and added to the motion if they want to make it as part of the motion, or it falls and we go back to the motion. So I voted in a situation where I thought I was voting for the amendment. Now I found that I've voted for something I didn't want to vote for. So basically, I think we ought to be going through the exercise all over again so that everybody is aware and clear on what the position is.
Chair, I thought when I spoke, I made it clear that you're voting on the main motion, the 3 recommendations in the report, plus the agreed amendment, which the mover and seconder of the main motion had agreed to add to the recommendations. I did say that just before the vote.
And that was my interpretation of what the motion was as well, Chair, or the amendment was as well.
Unfortunately, it certainly wasn't mine, and I was asked to vote on it. It wasn't clear to me.
We have voted, so we shall now move on. Can I now invite Councillor Armitage to present the report, the recruitment of a new independent person?
Thank you, Chair. You'll note from the report that one of our 2 independent persons has indicated his wish to resign from the position, and the council need to consider the re-advertising of the post. Standards Committee have considered the role of the independent person previously and concur with the Council's previous agreement to engage 2 IPs to ensure continuity in case of sickness or other non-availability. This report, therefore, requests Council support for the monitoring officer to commence a recruitment exercise for a replacement and to bring forth a suitable candidate for ratification at a future council meeting. Further, the report suggests that the stage of requesting recruitment, as it is being done here, is delegated in future to the monitoring officer. We would, of course, ask for Sarah to keep group leaders and myself as chair of standards informed of a resignation and progress towards a replacement prior to an appointment report being brought before the council. I would therefore like to move recommendations 6.1 to 6.4 of the report.
Is there a seconder?
I'm very happy to second, Chair.
Are there any comments? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I'd just like to clarify with Councillor Armitage, if I could, ask him to reiterate the 6.3 aspect. Are we suggesting that the monitoring officer makes the actual decision of recruitment, or are we still saying that that would come back to council for approval? I have concerns if it's one but not the other.
I'll just refer to my notes, Councillor.
If I could help out, most certainly not coming to me for a decision. All this delegation does is allows me to start the process. So instead of coming to the council twice, I can come once with the recruitment process having been done and having kept leaders of the parties informed, but suggesting a candidate for appointment so that you can decide whether or not to appoint.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm in favour of it then. Thank you.
We'll now move to the vote. I will ask the governance officer to issue a poll.
Poll's been launched, Chair, so it should be available for those who to vote.
And Amy, there's 2 for in the chamber.
Okay, so that makes it 45 votes for, so that's carried, Chair.
Thank you. I invite Karen Hanson, Director of the Environment and Enforcement, to give a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Okay, Amy, can you confirm that you can see that on the screen, please?
I can, yes, Karen, it's fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon, councillors. I'm just going to run through for you our Year 1 review and summary of the achievements under the council plan for 2019 to 2023. You'll recall that the council plan document looks like that one on the screen. We agreed way back in September 2019 that we would divide the priorities up into 4 sections. So our residents, our environment, our services and our economy. Okay, so the council plan was a 4-year plan. It's approved at full council on the 9th of September 2019. And we then commenced a period of transition between the old council plan and the new one, and we worked both of those together for the final 6 months of that financial year. The formal performance monitoring of the new plan came into effect from the 1st of April 2020, and you'll recall that the first lockdown, the first wave of COVID-19 commenced in March 2020. So To date, the council plan has been impacted severely by the coronavirus and COVID-19 amendments that we've put forward, and I'll explain that as I go forward in the presentation. We wanted to start off by going through some achievements. This is by no means all achievements so far. It's a snapshot of the key headlines, really. There's quite a lot in terms of bullet points, so I will ensure that you get a copy of the presentation with the minutes of the meeting in case you want to look at any further details after the presentation itself. Okay, so in terms of the first section, our residents, we have already finished quite a lot of these targets and these priorities. So the council tax was frozen as agreed in the manifesto and was put forward in the council plan. The older people's strategy was approved by council for 2020-2023, and that sets out the council's vision to support older people within the district through work, health, safety, social isolation, leisure, and also financial inclusion. In addition, we've continued our commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant, and we've built on the Bronze Award that we were initially awarded with, and we're now on the Silver Award, which acknowledges exceptional support to the Armed Forces community. There's a lot more information about that. If anybody wants anything, then please let me know and we can go through exactly what we've achieved in terms of that award so far. We've also signed up to all 5 pledges of the British Deaf Association's Charter, British Sign Language, and to date, again, many actions have already been carried out, even though we've been through a lengthy period of COVID response. All service managers have been briefed on the requirements, and we're well on our way to making some major improvements there in terms of accessibility. The new council website has been launched, and I hope you'll agree with me that it is improved from the last one. It looks very good, and we've had a lot of hits on that website so far. And that was launched ahead of its target date. And again, contains more accessibility features and documents than ever before. So that's another big piece of work that we've managed to achieve. We also, working with the County Council, have a comprehensive offer for children in care and care leavers. And that includes things like the council tax discount scheme, leisure membership, and other initiatives that we've worked with the County Council on. And then finally on that page, for residents, we've also adopted the Single Equality Scheme for 2019 to 2023. And that's our commitment to providing services which promote equality and fairness and also challenge inequality and discrimination. If I can move on to the environment, a huge piece of work that the council has as a major priority and a big commitment to is around the climate change strategy. And you'll be aware that we've approved the climate change strategy and declared the climate change emergency. And you'll see listed on that slide 5 or 6 bullet points which just underpin some of the work that's already taken place. Councillor Dale mentioned earlier the £3 million Green Homes programme, which also contains £575,000 worth of funding towards that programme to upgrade council properties. We've issued the Climate Change Advice Pack to parish councils, which I think has been received very well, and they've offered thanks for that and are using it regularly with their parishes. We've got the £20,000 Low Carbon Skills Fund, the LED lighting upgrades, leisure facility upgrades as well are underway and working closely within our leisure teams to make sure that those are carried through. With the COVID-19 arrangements, working from home and agile working really was thrown upon us overnight, and we've started to really look at that in detail to make sure that we can still work towards the priorities of the council while ensuring that we have a very agile and flexible workforce working safely within COVID arrangements, and that has worked very well so far. And we also have the wild planting policy for parks and open spaces approved. As a result of that, we have carbon emissions reduction across the district, and we also work with and potentially lead on a county-wide climate group. If anybody wants any more information about that, there is also at the meeting this afternoon, we'll be able to give you some more information about that piece of work. It's very big and very comprehensive. Okay, in terms of our services section of the council plan, again, we've got some more strategic pieces of work completed, including the digital strategy. probably as a result of COVID, but nonetheless a very, very good piece of work is around the increase of online service transactions in 2019 and 2020, and that's continued to increase due to COVID and also our communication strategy around getting as many people to transact with us online as possible and as appropriately as possible. We're investing in our own staff as well through a range of ideas and initiatives, and one of those is the leadership programme, and I know that that's been very, very well attended, and that the staff involved in that are really progressing very well in terms of growing our own skills for the future leadership of the council. We've also undertaken recently some management restructure, and you'll be aware of that in terms of the higher levels of management across the council, to make sure that we have the right people in place to fit the new priorities and ambition of the council working forward. And I mentioned earlier the piece of work we've done around climate change with the parish councils, but that goes further than that, and we also have enhanced working arrangements with them. It's worked very well throughout the COVID pandemic. We have kept in regular contact with parish councils and town councils to share information and provide advice, guidance and support where it's been required. Just going into a little bit more detail around that, we've worked very hard with the community support team to support over 7,000 residents with specific inquiries as part of the COVID pandemic, making food parcel deliveries and also almost 10,000 pharmacy deliveries during the first wave of COVID-19. That work hasn't stopped. I want to give you reassurance that that work is ongoing. The COVID support team, the community support team, are still up and running. The call centre is still making those calls to the most vulnerable residents. But what we have found nationally as well as locally is that people are much more prepared for the second wave. They have more access routes to gain food supplies, working with big supermarkets and other voluntary sector arrangements to make sure that all of that is in place, and there's nowhere near the same requirement and the same need for the kind of emergency support that we saw in the first wave, which is very good to hear. We've also jointly reviewed some of the Ricknold Homes arrangements to fit the new priorities and the ambitions of the council, and that includes policies as well. So not only the structure of Ricknold Homes and the monitoring arrangements and the management agreement, but also policies, and I've just given you a couple of examples there. So the joint domestic abuse policy and also the community safety work that we do jointly with Ricknold Homes, particularly around antisocial behaviour. Okay, moving on to our economy, again, some very large pieces of work, strategic pieces of work that are taking place and are continuing throughout the pandemic have been the Claycross Town Board, which is formed, the specialists who are appointed and the town investment plan has been submitted. And I think Jill Callingham may well be discussing that and talking through those arrangements with you in a moment as part of the agenda of this meeting. There's also 3 jobs fairs that have taken place, 2 virtually. The first one was prior to the pandemic arrangements, but the second and third were virtual and were still very, very well attended. We've used a lot of social media platforms. We've promoted the arrangements with a large number of businesses, and we've had some really good engagement and interaction and a huge take-up, which has been really pleasing actually for everybody in our economic development team. And the next fair is planned to take place in the new year, around the 27th of January. Okay, you'll be aware that there was a requirement very, very early on and throughout the pandemic to do a lot of work to support businesses wherever we possibly could, including the very quick and efficient distribution of government support grants. So I've listed there just 4 types of grants that we've already been involved in. So we've got the Local Authority Discretionary Grants Fund, the £18 million worth of business grants awarded through a range of different grant systems. And then as the second wave of the pandemic, we now have a further 3 grant funding schemes to assist businesses, which we are working on as we speak. And I know that many officers are working very, very hard and very quickly to try and get those guidance notes and that money out to businesses. And also the test and trace isolation payments are being managed by our Revenues and Benefits Department. Okay, so in addition to that, and I guess this crosses over with the services section as well, but we've also carried out some thorough and fundamental reviews of the planning team and the environmental health services team to ensure that they're both fit for purpose and that they can continue to offer excellent services and be effective and well-resourced and with a skilled workforce. We've taken our time in doing that because we wanted to make sure that they were very, very rigorous service reviews. We've managed to, I think Councillor Dale referred to it right at the very beginning during his announcements, but we've managed to secure some growth in both of those teams to make sure that we have focus on the right things. So we've got some arboricultural and heritage resource going into the planning team, along with some robust enforcement officers. And environmental health, it really is around making sure we've got the right professionals in the right place and that we're able to recruit and retain staff effectively on our patch, and to also grow our own skills and to keep those jobs within our district wherever possible. As a result of the pandemic, we've also now set up a specific COVID support team in environmental health. And that team, albeit quite small at the moment, but it's working very, very closely on a daily basis with the public health unit at the county council to ensure that we do as much as we possibly can around infection control, to make sure that businesses have everything in place that they need around support, advice and guidance to ensure that they can continue to trade when the lockdown is lifted in a COVID secure way, working very, very closely around any clusters that arise or any outbreaks of COVID within business arrangements in the district. And again, I think just the last two bullet points there are around the improvements to the planning team. So we've got the planning enforcement plan, which has now been improved, and we're also exceeding targets for processing major and minor planning applications. Okay, so the first year review has taken place, and what we've done is we've looked at all of our existing performance targets for the very first 12 months of the plan period. We've ensured that they're still relevant, and you'll probably be aware that COVID-19 really has affected the council plan across all areas really, especially around economic development, and the refocus around the support required for businesses has been quite extensive. All heads of service have consulted with their respective cabinet members, and we've done some housekeeping as well. So we've looked at some of the key performance indicators which should really be in service plans and removed them and pushed them down a little bit, and also brought out some new ones which are more effective for what we need now. Okay, so in terms of some new targets and the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at moving forward, and I mentioned earlier about the effects of the pandemic, it really is around support for businesses through effective signposting, establishing some apprenticeship support, and we're going to be launching any day now an apprenticeship hour for businesses to call us for advice and support around setting up apprenticeships and driving forward that training and apprenticeship programme. We're looking at implementing and managing an annual programme of capital improvements and monitoring performance against the corporate equality objectives, which I mentioned earlier. So there's quite a lot there in terms of refining what we're already doing. The next slide really just builds on that, particularly around the production of the growth strategy, tourism strategy, and an employment and skills strategy. All of those have really taken on a completely different life of their own following the pandemic. We've gone from a response mode to a recovery mode and back into a response mode for the second wave of the pandemic. So the work that we're doing around growth and employment and tourism has completely changed focus, and that's why we'll be delivering those new strategies by the very beginning of next year. There's a continuation and progression of the business cases around OP, the One Public Estate programme for Eckington and Killamarsh, and also the Clay Cross investment plan. I think quite an exciting piece of work which has just started is around the development of a master plan for Dronfield Civic Centre, and we'll also continue to drive forward those jobs fairs which have been so well attended and appear to be so important across the district. In terms of work in progress, We'll continue to support residents to upskill, to improve employability through the initiatives there at that bullet point around jobs fairs and Kickstart, particularly around construction in the district. And we're going to look at an asset management strategy to maximise income, and also some more of those enforcement activities when the time feels right and is appropriate to do so. Every piece of enforcement that we do now, we really do consider the appropriateness of it, whether it be fixed penalty notices, whether it be around joined up enforcement between planning and environmental health. So we understand that we need to continue with enforcement appropriately, but we don't want to be overzealous, taking into account the situation of businesses at the moment. So we are really thinking that through and making sure that it's joined up, but also very effective and where it needs to be. Okay, and I think my final slide really just confirms what I've just said. So in terms of the impact of COVID on the council plan itself, we've had to really go into business continuity arrangements since March. We are delivering all priority services and also a lot of non-priority services now, but we have had to really rethink some of the ways that we go about doing that. A lot of it's online, a lot of it has changed in terms of how we engage with people and what the expectations are both of the council and our expectations of businesses and residents across the whole of the district. We've put in place an extensive package of community support, particularly around the first wave, using staff who weren't able to do their normal day job and moving them on to supporting the public to make sure that they have exactly what they need, particularly around food parcels and pharmacy deliveries and mental health support as well. Response and recovery plans have really taken off. We've got comprehensive plans both internally and externally to recover from the first wave, and we're also now actively responding to the second wave of COVID, particularly in the lockdown period as we are now. And finally, kind of business support and environmental health, infection control and enforcement. A lot of our resources have been refocused from what they were doing and reprioritised to make sure that we have all of that in place as a priority. Some of the other pieces of work that we wanted to move forward are currently on ice while we make sure that we have those really key pieces of work, that key support ongoing. But there's not an awful lot really that hasn't been looked at that we said we would look at. We just need to make sure that we get our priorities in the right place when we're working through the pandemic. And I think that's it from me. If anybody's got any questions, myself, Lee and Jill will be able to answer anything that you may have. I'll just stop sharing this now. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Ridgway?
Yeah, just a bit of clarity. You said the test and trace payment. Can you tell me what that is? Is that paying staff that are you paying them full pay if they test positive for COVID-19?
No, that's a payment, a national payment which we administer. So if anybody across the district has to self-isolate and they qualify, there is a qualification, they can claim a payment of £500 to support them and their families whilst they're in self-isolation. So if they suffer detriment and they're in receipt of benefits, then they can claim a £500 payment.
Right. So you're saying that's for businesses? So
No, for residents.
Right, okay, so that's for residents. So are residents aware of that? Because my concern is that if somebody is working and they test positive and they have to take time off, which they would do, they can't afford the rent and that goes against them. Are they going to be told that there is that payment for them to be able to pay that 2 weeks rent? Because this is what's going to happen. People are going to be worried about evictions and things like that. So I think there needs to be a little bit more clarity on that. And I think the general public need to know that that money's there if it is needed.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask Jane Bessick to reply, because she'll be aware of how many of those test and trace applications we've received and how we're going about communicating that. Jane, are you around?
I'm Karen, yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ridgway. Yes, the Revs and Bens team are administering this, but it is a national scheme and it's been publicised nationally, and we have got links through our website, but I will of course check that that's prominent enough, because you're absolutely right, it's a really valuable scheme for the people that want to use it. We are getting an awful lot of claims. I think we've had 52 so far, so we are processing quite a lot of claims across the district. We are doing it in conjunction with the National Test and Trace system, and we're getting the payments out as quickly as we can, and the people that are receiving it, you're right, are very grateful for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I think not everybody has access to the web, especially if they're very sort of low. No disrespect, people that maybe cannot afford to have the web. So I think it needs to be clarified in maybe on their rent book or something. Do you know what I mean? I just think there needs to be other ways that we can let people know about this, because obviously people want to work, they don't want to go off, but if they haven't got access to the internet because they can't afford it, because some people can't afford it, how are you going about letting those people know that there is that money there to help bridge that gap if they do need it?
Happy to take that away, Councillor Ridgway, and have a look at the other mediums that we can use for it. So
that's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
You, Chair. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a very positive report, Karen, and well presented, and everything's hunky-dory. And I suppose as the lead opposition, I should pull it to pieces, but I'm not going to. I'll probably get in trouble with my group for not doing that. But I think we are in a position where we're working, with this COVID crisis, and we do really want to sort of work together. And I think, Alex, by reinventing the Viper meetings and things like that, it does feel as though we are in unprecedented times. And while ever we providing the services that we are, like you said at the beginning, both at the council and at Ricknord, I think we're doing a great job. I think one thing that was missing out of that was the money, because I'm reading, not just here, obviously at North East, but the majority of councils, when the dust settles, it's going to impact on services. And while it might look good at the moment, I think we have got to start making, and I'm sure you're thinking about this, that when we come out of this, whether we can actually carry on maintaining all those services or whatever reason. And while ever it looks great this year, I think that there are issues coming forward. And I know we mentioned them at Viper, and Alex mentioned them in his reports, but let's not lose sight of that it's going to be very difficult, isn't it, I think. Thank you anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Fennell.
I am here. I'm trying to get thing off the screen. Can you hear me okay and see me?
I can hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, better. Yeah, thanks for that, Karen. You must be exhausted dealing with all that sort of activity. Just one area that I wanted to focus on. One line you talked about an asset management strategy, and that was going to maximise income. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit more. The asset management strategy.
Okay, I may need to pull Jill in for this as part of the asset management programme, but it's all really around making sure that the council uses its assets to the best advantage, particularly around the business premises that the council owns. But Jill, have you got any further things to add around that?
Sorry about that, I was just struggling to unmute myself. So the idea is we own areas of land. We've got regeneration plans around Claycross and Drumfield and Eckington and Killamarsh. And the idea is that we have a comprehensive plan about understanding how we're going to use our land for regeneration purposes or maximising income, because we own some assets as well. And are we making the best use of them, particularly coming out of COVID and where business needs support? So it's kind of looking at that again in a post-COVID world to what's best to serve North East Derbyshire.
Okay, does that mean disposal and selling of land and property?
there's potential to do that, to develop it, to join it with other pieces of land. It just needs to be looked at to see are we doing the best we can.
So it's in its early stages at the moment then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birkin.
Thank you, Chair. Very detailed presentation, Karen. Thank you very much for that. Is it possible to get copies of your presentation so we can look at it maybe more closely with a bit more time that we've got ourselves? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. It was definitely a whistle-stop tour. So I'll send it out to you. And then if you want to pick up any of the points and send me through any questions, then I will get some comprehensive responses back to you with a bit more detail if you need it. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Ridgway, I was hoping that we might be able to get an update from Ricknold in terms of the support they're giving to people renting, and also to ask if Jane Deddick could share, I think when she's got all the full information, some of the grants. I know there's been a lot of work done on that, and I've had a fact sheet, and that might be useful to be circulated to all members in case you get queries on some of these things. But I'd just like to say thank you to Karen, and huge thank you to officers and staff for their tremendous achievement and their outstanding work in stepping up at this difficult time, and for achieving a great many of the objectives originally set, plus additional ones that obviously we hadn't anticipated. I want to just also give a shout out to the Economic Development team, Revenue and Benefits, Environmental Health and the Partnership team for all the advice, support, guidance and the timely manner in which they distributed the grants to thousands of businesses over this crisis. And I know you're working hard to work up the next lots of grants. Obviously, these weren't targets that we put in, but we were certainly smashed them in terms of our numbers of business spoken to over this last few months. And just to say that I'd have had dozens of messages from businesses thanking our staff for their support, and I'd just like that to be noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to a vote to note the presentation. Thank you.
I think Councillor Powell's indicating that he wishes to speak.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Powell.
Oh yeah, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Rennick said. Actually, I have a number of friends who are in business in Sheffield, and they keep saying they wish they lived in North East Derbyshire because we get the grants out a lot quicker than anybody else. I'd just like to echo the thanks really to the officers. When Karen says there are large pieces of work, she's being very modest. They are very large pieces of work. And to have to do that against the background of the pandemic has been truly remarkable. So I'd just like to say thanks for all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Councillor Dale.
Sorry, just to echo the thanks to officers there, and thanks to officers there, and just in response to Councillor Barker's point, there was a lot of achievements there, but I think it's important that to note that we're not complacent in any way. There's actually several areas of the council plan that has understandably been affected by COVID. We're having to adapt, we're having to change, we're having to do new things. So you're right, it's not always all rosy, and there is balance there. And but I do think, as I said at the beginning, it's important that we don't let COVID disrupt, the progress that we want to make as a council, and some of the priorities that we all have as members of the council. So thanks once again to the officers for all of their work, as well as cabinet members, and also Councillor Thacker, obviously, as leader for a lot of the the time that those achievements have been made. Thank you, Chair.
We will now move to a vote to note the presentation. Can we have a show of hands, please?
That appears to be unanimous, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Carried. I invite Jill Callingham, Director of Growth and Economic Development, to give a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Does somebody want to give me? Oh, got access now. Thank you. Can I just check, Alan? You can see that.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
Are you? That's it.
Yeah, got that one. So thank you. I'm going to just quickly bring you up to date with what's happening in Claycross as part of the Towns Fund. For those that it may be a little while since you've looked at this, the government announced a Towns Fund back in September 2019, pre-COVID, if you can remember those times, and it was around supporting towns within England that have suffered economic decline, need a boost, and it was looking at £3.6 billion to be shared amongst those. North East Derbyshire put in a bid for Claycross and was successful, and since that time we have been looking to create a town investment plan. There's a two-stage approach to the deal, and we have been working our way through stage one, which was to create a board, because the Towns deal isn't a council-run thing. It is a Claycross independent board, but we are here to support it. And through that, we needed to create an investment plan about how we would use the £25 million within the Claycross to support economic development and various other areas of health, well-being. The second stage, which we're about to move into, is turning that investment plan into business cases and start delivering on the ground. The government gave us some funding to early on to appoint consultants to help us with that process, and earlier in the year we got Nexus in as our consultant. The town board is really an important part of this, and it's really important that it's got private sector involvement in it, that it represents the communities it serves. So from that you can see that it is chaired by Gary Golden from Worcester Bosch, one of the major employers in Claycross, and includes a range of providers that provides sports support, parish councils in there, Sports England, Homes England, and skills is really important as part of this work. So Chesterfield College are a part there as well. The first part of the Claycross plan was to understand what it is we're trying to do in Claycross, what needs to happen to make it that really special place to live. It's had years of decline when the coal mining industry stopped, but it's growing in the fact there's a housing development around that area, new people are coming into the area, and to make it a really successful town, particularly after COVID-19, what is it we need to put into place to give it a nice rounded town feel? Plans were drawn up, and there were two stages of consultation. June and July this year, during COVID-19, we did issues and opportunities within Claycross. That went out to people within Claycross and the wider area. And then the outcome of that was developed into a draft investment plan, and that went out again for consultation in July and August. When that information came back, that was considered, and that became the basis of the investment plan, which we've submitted now to government. Government released £500,000 as accelerator fund to get you started on your journey through the investment plan. We've identified projects around demolishing buildings to make way for development, to get an art project started, and a few other things. So we've identified what we want to do with that money, or the board has identified and endorsed what that money needs to be used for. This is the plan in draft, so this is just looking at it at very high level terms. You can find this on the council's website if you look, but if you Google Towns Fund, you'll find it there. So just give you a little bit of background. That's this area here, that's Tesco. This here is Charlie Park Leisure Centre. So part of one of the schemes is to renew that and to make it into a wellbeing hub. There are projects to change the infrastructure so it's better walking and cycling routes and through Clay Cross. Creating more of a town centre that's missing because we've got a lot of car parking, possibly not in the right areas. And then creating kind of a skills somewhere that skills could be used, where people can learn new skills, making outreach areas to support businesses in Clay Cross. So we ended up with 10 projects, and these are the ones that we've submitted as part of our investment plan. I'll just quickly run through. So Market Street, looking at creating a market square, some commercial homes. Bridge Street, relocating the bus station, supporting housing, leisure, commercial premises. Clay Cross Creative, there is that's around how we use community assets. There's and how we can support people in that wider creative areas that's a bit lacking at the moment in Clay Cross. Talked about Charlie Park. We've got a skills hub, an enterprise hub. Again, that'll be working with FE providers and the universities. Clay Cross Connections is about that public realm and transport links. Low carbon workspace. There's a theme for Clay Cross of low energy, clean carbon, making things more energy efficient. And so we're looking at creating more business space, but with a low carbon focus. The building will be low carbon. Again, low carbon housing in Clay Cross might be linked to Charlie Park, some district heating type thing, which leads into that energy network that we're looking at. And the last thing we're looking at is a train feasibility study for Clay Cross that will look, it won't be delivered in the time of the plan, which is the next 5 years, but it will start that process about looking to Clay Cross to get a train station. So that's one of the other projects we put forward to government. The current position is that we've submitted that plan. It was signed off by the board and it was submitted at the end of October. As a board, we've had a number of private sector members, but with COVID-19, some of those have had to drop off because they've got business commitments. And so we're going through a drive at the moment to get more private sector bodies on that board. Within the board, there are working groups to work on each of those projects, and some of those are well ahead, like Charlie Park, and other ones have just been established. What's really clear to us that we need to engage with younger people in Clay Cross, so we're looking to create a youth board that can then feed into their main Clay Cross board. The submission to government, we're going through a stage now where we have to answer their queries. They are assessing our bids, and it takes about, if anything from what's happened on the wave 1 bids is takes about 4 months. So we're expecting to hear back around February and March. The bids that have been announced so far that went in at June have been in the 20 million up to 25 million. So they've been in the early 20s, 21, 22, 23 have been given to those towns. So well, hopefully if that carries on, we should be around that level. And I think that is my end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Just to stop sharing.
Councillor Barker.
Just a comment really, Gil, and I mean, I've been involved with this from the start, and I think again, the way that Carl Apps has put in to sort of pull it all together and try and get this bid in, because it's the time scale's been a bit short, hasn't it? And I think this is only the first hurdle, is the getting the bid in. And then obviously when the money comes, then we've got to, then it gets, the work starts, if you like. But at this process, I think the officers involved have done really well. I just make the comment, and it's been made to me, that there are quite a lot of local people that feel left out of this process, that have got skills and things. So if we can involve some of the community groups a bit more, but that's something going forward, because there are, I can name 2 or 3 that live and breathe Claycross, you know what I mean, and that they know it inside out. Not just, I know the businesses have got to be involved to tick the boxes, but I think we've got to take the community with us as well. And I'm not quite getting that buy-in at the moment. I'm feeling that's what I'm feeling, Jill, and it's something we need to consider going forward. But to get the bid in the timescale has been fantastic, and if we can get 20 million, 25 million for Claycross, then brilliant.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll make sure that we liaise and work out which of those groups that want to be involved in the working groups that we're setting up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Windley.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jill. Could I ask about, I haven't got the map now in front of me, the Market Square you talk about in Market Street area, where is that planned in for, please?
Do you want me to share that plan again? So this is quite high level, so it's
Yeah,
just
thank
schematic. So
you.
let me bring it up for you. Has everybody seen that now? I'm going to take that as a yes. So the Market Square is around this area here. Can you see with 10, 2 and 13 are written, where it says cinema? So this area here is where the Market Square is. So we've got a residential and potentially a market there. And this at the back here, that area there, that's where the Tesco petrol station is.
Right, so you're dropping it lower down from Market Street then, am I looking at that right? Yeah.
So Tesco's here, Tesco big stores here.
Yeah.
Tesco petrol stations there.
Right.
And then this is the roundabout. So it's on that roundabout.
On that roundabout.
Yeah, there. So you know that area that doesn't really, it's got lots of bits of businesses in. It's about making a place there. And then that is about joining that to the rest of this area here, which has got car parking in.
Right.
And joining then some routes up to join it to the rest of major points in Claycross.
Yeah. So it's still actually moving things away from the original old Market Street, where there's businesses that's always been there, and I know they've been struggling since we had Tesco's, and because it's sort of moved, hasn't it, now, the town centre. So I just wondered if you've got any plans to sort of, bring that back in for those businesses that are there.
So I'm going to bring Carl in on this, because he'll be able to go into more detail. But at the moment, for me, it feels like everything's a bit Tesco dominated over here, and you've got the small, the independents. So by moving a Market Square here, you're kind of bringing those independent more towards those independent stores to make a town centre, and away from Tesco being dominating. So you've got space to do it there.
Right.
Carl, is there any? Sorry, Carl, do you want to add anything in?
Yeah, the town investment plan is very much about putting a footfall back into the town centre and making sure that people have a reason to attend, and to sort of try and support those businesses that are existing. So a lot of the work is around creating a heart again within the town centre, and it recognises that it's a market town without a market. So that was kind of a big part of the work, is identifying the correct and appropriate space for that, and then looking to see how we can sort of bring that forward. So that's a big part of the town investment plan, is making it a market town again, and trying to make it more of a functional space, because as you rightly say, Tesco dominates Clay Cross, and it almost becomes a town sort of divided by the road network. That means that most people drive into Tesco's, do the shopping there, and don't necessarily do a second trip into to see the independent retailers that are on the rest of Clay Cross. So that's a big part of that work, is how do we integrate Tesco's within the rest of Clay Cross and amend that sever between the two, and increase the footfall on to the independent retailers.
Right. Still moving it a little bit away from the market street as it is though, isn't it?
Well, the area is actually a bit to the, it's not quite where Jill had mentioned. It's a bit further down and to the right, and it's a bit nearer where the job centre currently is. So it's around that sort of space, you know, where the large junction and all the rest is. It's actually nearer that part, which feels more the heart of the town potentially. So it's a little bit to the right of where has been indicated. So yeah, it's bringing that footfall, and we think it's at the right place, and it's about relocating. So the bus station actually relocates to the other part, which then opens that space up and makes it a lot more usable. And like I said, then it's a better connection between Tesco's and the independent retailers, and it's almost like a natural pull to pull people into that to those independent retailers, as you say, because they're the ones we need to support.
Yeah. So it's not as I was thinking. The other place where Jill said it, it's quite a walk actually. You know, not everybody can walk that far, but that is a better plan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry, Councillor, that was my fault, because this arrow's here and I'm doing too big an area. So the arrow for this comes down and drops right in the middle there.
And yeah, that's fine. That's fine, Jill. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Renwick.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Jill. I sit on the board, and this is a hugely exciting project for Clay Cross, and it really is a once in a generation opportunity to transform the prosperity of Clay Cross for its residents, businesses, and the wider area and community. And hopefully, with part of stage 2, Councillor Windley will hopefully see a bit more detail as the business plans works up. But I just hope that everyone in this council will agree and fully endorse the work of the town board, and wish them well in the next stages. And I also like to particularly thank Carl Apps, who's been leading officer on this project. It has been quite a sprint to get over the first line. I think Councillor Barker was right to point out that obviously the big campaign we had in terms of initially to try and get more responses, you know, during COVID was more difficult. And there's definitely opportunities to get more input at the next stage. So I'd like to also thank Councillor Morley and Councillor Barker for their input and support, and the Parish Council to help shape this bid. But now the hard work really starts, and there's definitely opportunity for anybody who wants to get involved and to make suggestions and to see the plans develop. Here's your opportunity now, and we'll double our efforts in getting more people involved in the working group to the next stage. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? No. We will now move to a vote to note the presentation. A show of hands, please.
That appears to be unanimous, Chair.
Yes. Can I now invite Councillor Parkin to present the report? Treasury Management Update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report provides an update on the Council's Treasury Management activities for April 2020 to September 2020. Appendix 1 details the current borrowing activity and interest paid on external borrowing, as well as providing an update on the Council's investments and interest these generate. We were initially concerned, as I've no doubt every councillor here would concur, about the COVID pandemic and how that would impact the way that the council's finances were managed. I've got to say that our cash flow position in particular was the first one of concern. Early action was taken, and in actual fact it's remained relatively static throughout. This is largely as a result of the measures that were put in place in the early phases under the leadership of Councillor Martin Thacker at the time. And I have to say that the period of time between the imposition of the change and later in the year put a big load on the finance department, because we were having to literally approve every single purchase, which was right, but it did put an exceptional load on there. So I'd like to thank in particular the finance team for that period of work and everything they do, of course. So as a result of that, the cash flow has been relatively static, as I say, throughout this year so far, certainly throughout the period of this report. So the measures that were put in place, plus the receipt of government grants and reimbursements, which have assisted us financially, and it's important to note here that the government the government making a decision to pay these grants up front rather than their normal practice of paying them on a monthly basis has meant that the cash flow position of the council has been able to be sustained over the COVID period, over the period that we had the first lockdown and beyond. There were some comments earlier in the council meeting about the coming year, and we'll have more on that very soon. But Councillor Barker's observations, I believe it was, are absolutely correct. We are involved in attempting to forecast the unforecastable. So I hope you'll appreciate it when we do have the budget meeting in February, that those things are a moving feast even now, even today. So the government paid all the S31 grants up front rather than the normal monthly, and that did help. And the deferment of business rates payments for the first 6 months, of course, as well. Collection rates for council tax and rents down 1.74% and 1.4% respectively. They're down on previous years, but clearly not significantly, which has also helped. So the good people of North East Derbyshire have kept us afloat. Thank you. As you'd expect, the biggest drop is for business rates, which is 6.5% down on previous years. And as a result of this, I'd like to move the recommendation at 6.1 for the council note the treasury management activities undertaken during the period April to September 2020, as outlined in Appendix 1.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Are there any comments?
No one appears to be indicating, Chair.
We will move to the vote. Sorry, I will ask the Governance Officer to issue a poll. Thank you.
Poll's been issued, Chair. To be available for those who have access to it to vote.
plus Amy plus 2 in the chamber. Yeah.
Okay, if those are for, then that's unanimous. Everyone's voted for the recommended action.
Item 12, Vision Derbyshire, has been withdrawn, so we shall move on to answer any questions from the procedure rule 9.2. No, 14. Councillor, I can confirm that we did receive one question submitted under procurement rule 9.2, but it was with agreement withdrawn prior to the meeting. So we shall move to the next item. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10, I can confirm that we have 2 motions to consider. I now invite Councillor Shipman to move motion A on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered whether, with your permission, it would be okay if Councillor Dale could update us on where the counties are, and because I know we've obviously, since the motion's gone in, the government's changed its mind on funding, sending funding to the county council, and obviously we've had discussions at Viper, and some things are going forward. I just wondered whether it would be prudent for Councillor Dale just to update the councillors where we're at, because if things are in place which is to the which is along the lines of this motion, then I might as well just pull it if we're already moving towards that step. If that's okay, Chair. And if Councillor Dale's happy to do that, but I think it might be useful for all members to understand what's going on.
Can we move for a second on the motion? Can we have Councillor Dale, are you able to speak?
Yeah, I'm very happy to. I was actually assuming that the motion wasn't withdrawn. I was going to suggest an amendment anyway, almost to bring it up to date. Because I think Councillor Shipman will appreciate, as he says, things have moved on since the day that he submitted the motion. So, I mean, just by way of a quick update for members, and I have been trying to provide updates at Viper meetings. The government has now announced the COVID winter grant scheme, totalling £170 million. And Derbyshire's allocation is £2.18 million. Now, the money is ring-fenced 80% to food and bills to support vulnerable children and their families. And just to put that into context, we calculate that 1 week of free school meal vouchers, should we be purchasing those in Derbyshire, would cost about 350,000. So the grant of 2.18 million is quite substantial. It is supposed to last us until March 2021. So in reality, if you're focusing on the holiday periods, it's supposed to cover us for 2 weeks of holiday in Christmas plus 1 week in February. On top of that, the government has announced the extension of the holiday activities and food programme to December 2021, totalling £220 million, as well as a range of other measures. Now, work is already underway at the County Council to work out eligibility criteria and the scope of what sort of support we can offer. It's fair to say that the guidance from the government hasn't yet been released. They're referring to hoping to do that a bit later this month, which makes planning for delivery a little bit challenging, as you can imagine. However, officers from the County Council have attended a briefing with colleagues from the MHCLG to explain a little bit more. And it's clear that although there are some expectations in terms of reporting back to government on what has been delivered, the things like the eligibility criteria are quite flexible. So it's up to the county, working with partners and other stakeholders, to determine who they want to provide support to. It doesn't have to just be 3 school meals sort of recipients. It doesn't rigidly have to stick to that list. It could go wider. It could also go to vulnerable older people, for example, who are on their own. So there is quite a lot of work still underway at the County Council to try and establish options of what exactly we could fund with the money, what sort of groups of people or different criteria of eligibility we could approach. I'm very happy to keep the Viper meetings updated on how that progresses It may well be that some form of vouchers is required because of logistics and the capacity issues within the sort of voluntary sector at the moment. We know that the voluntary sector is having to focus quite a lot on the clinically extremely vulnerable group. So in terms of Christmas and the lack of time that there is to prepare it, there is the potential that a voucher scheme may be the best option. But as I say, it's a little bit too early, unfortunately, to be able to give much more detail, because there is quite a lot of work still going into working out the eligibility criteria and what what options we actually have in terms of delivery to residents. I hope that's a useful update. As I say, I can't provide much more detail than that because it just simply isn't there yet. But as soon as it is, I will happily share it with Viper, and obviously group leaders can then cascade it out to their groups. And I would like, just a final point to add, I would like the district council to play an active role in supporting the county and other stakeholders to help deliver this scheme. So I'm looking at ways in which we can involve the districts in particular and the parishes to help us deliver that scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Councillor Shipman, do you wish to withdraw your motion?
Well, I was going to say, if Councillor Dale's going to amend it and bring it in line with what we're actually doing, would it be wise just to move this as is with Councillor Dale's amendment and then get members to vote that through? Does that work? I mean, I think at least it shows commitment that the district council is obviously thinking about the issue, and I think it probably does that work.
If I might, Chairman, to avoid confusion, it would be useful to move and second the motion, and then for Councillor Dale to move the amendment and have that seconded.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair. In that case, I'll move this motion. Obviously, like I say, I think there's a lot going off. The county council's doing a lot of work. The district council's already doing a lot of work behind the scenes. I think if we pass something today and just show our commitment that we know it's an issue, and that we are committed along with all the staff to ensuring that we play a key role in delivering some support to the most vulnerable in the North East Derbyshire. So I move the amendment as a whole. Sorry, the motion as a whole.
So do we have a seconder, Chair?
I'm happy to second, Chair. I'll reserve the right to speak, obviously, to let Alex move his amendment. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Dale to move his amendment.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think governance have a sort of copy of the motion as amended that hopefully they can share on the screen. So I'm happy to talk through that. Okay, I think can everyone see that? Simply, the only change in the first section, so that's to leave that largely as it is. But I think there was reference where the first red bit was to the summer holidays, and I think actually that I mean, unless I'm misreading that sentence, my interpretation was that the decision not to extend the free food voucher scheme was actually over the October half term. So that was just a clarification point. The council's welcomes bit is an additional section. It's just to note the fact that the government has now announced this recent grant and the county's allocation. And then the main change in terms of the resolutions is simply to suggest that rather than the first point in Councillor Shipman's motion, is to say that to offer support to the county council and commit to working with all relevant stakeholders across North Derbyshire, including the county council, to support the delivery of the COVID winter grant locally to vulnerable households. The latter 3 points under the resolve section are things that we've already discussed at Viper meetings, and I'm very grateful to the contributions of all members to those meetings around ideas for what we can do to support vulnerable residents in the lead up to Christmas. So the points there largely remain. I think the only additional amendment I had made was I think it referenced on the second to last bullet point to deliver parcels. Well, it's just we're not quite clear yet exactly what the support that the COVID winter grant is going to take. So I've just changed that to support to keep that flexible, because it may be parcels, it may be vouchers. We don't really know yet. So the change there will be that if supplies are greater than the demand for the service, look at other vulnerable groups to support. So that's the changes as far as I would suggest that they would be appropriate, and hope that other members will be happy to support.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Armitage. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that's a fair compromise, and the reason I withdrew my question, because obviously things had changed from when we submitted it, and obviously Alex had reported the VARPA meeting what the county council were thinking of doing, and I think that amendment sort of makes that commitment, like Ross says, that we are going to do something. Just as a bit of an aside, and I'll stand corrected, Alex, on this one, but while I was doing a bit of research into my question, which I've not asked, is that I looked at the observatory thing for 2018, and there were 1,562 pupils getting free school meals, and that's why I put in the question at 1,500. And yet I had something last week from Education Department to say there's now 2,569. Well, that's another 1,000 kids in 2 years. I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope I've read it wrong, but that's a massive increase in pupils getting free school meals over a 2-year period. And it's just something that come to me, and it knocked me back a bit, really, because that's a lot of kids that are going into free school meals. And I suppose I'd make the point politically is that when we do come out of this COVID crisis, that we don't expect the vulnerable and the one with the least to pay the most, because that's how it feels at the moment. It scared me a bit, to be honest, that we've got that many kids. That's in North East Derbyshire. There's a lot more in Derbyshire itself, so it's a big thing, Alex, that. And I will stand corrected if them figures aren't right, but just flagging that up. But I do support the motion, the amended motion.
Councillor Dale.
I'm not sure if I can come back, or is it a right to reply at the end? I can never remember. I'm happy to respond to that point.
It is right to reply at the end.
I'll wait till the end. Okay.
Wait till end, Alex. Wait till end.
Councillor Ridgway.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Can I ask who the stakeholders are? Are they schools? Are they GP surgeries? Is it the NHS that we talk to? Because I think, they're the very important people. They're the people that you'll get the information on who are vulnerable, not just in children, but in sort of families, the elderly, people that are ill as well. So I think, I agree with everything, but I think I do agree that we need to look at the broader picture as well. And I just like to know who the stakeholders are, and that we are involving all those people to find out who exactly are the vulnerable people in need.
Any other speaker? Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just taking the two, I won't prolong the debate. I think it sounds like we're all relatively happy with the amended motion. In terms of the two questions, numbers, Nigel, I'm not sure on the actual figures for North East Derbyshire. The rise doesn't strike me as overtly surprising, given that we have seen a significant rise across the county, particularly in relation to COVID, and I'm talking about additional thousands being added to the list, and that's largely reflective of the fact that that there have been redundancies through the COVID crisis, and more people having to claim universal credit. And obviously that's an absolute tragedy that's happening, but we're in this situation nationally or globally rather, and we can only hope that we get a vaccine soon and move forward and get the economy back on its feet. So that's the numbers situation. I don't know the exact figure, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's the current figure for North East Derbyshire and the increase there. In terms of stakeholders, obviously that was in Councillor Shipman's original version of the motion, so I wouldn't like to second guess, but I think we're referring to all of those people that Councillor Ridgway referred to, as well as the voluntary and community sector, you know, food banks and all sorts of charities that support vulnerable and isolated people. So yeah, I think that's correct, and I'm happy to move to the vote. Thank you, Chair.
Ross, Councillor Ross Shipman, if you wish to speak.
Yeah, I'm totally happy with that. I think where we're currently at, it matches the situation, I think. So I'll be supporting the amendment and the motion.
Can we have a show of hands for the amendment, please?
And all those who are in favour, please put their hands up.
That would appear to be unanimous, Chair.
Thank you.
And then, Chair, in full completeness, the amended motion, the substantive motion. Are there any other speakers?
Move to vote, Chair, I think.
Show of hands. Show of hands, please.
All those in favour.
Those in favour?
Again, that would appear to be unanimous, Chair.
Councillor Barker.
Is that me to move this motion?
Yes, please. Sorry. Yes.
You startled me then. I was startled. Just before I came to the motion, I meant to ask at the beginning of the meeting, when do we get sight of the minutes of the extraordinary meeting or not? I thought we might have seen them at this meeting. You can answer that in a bit, sir, if you want. I meant to ask at the beginning, but I got excited. So, but regarding this motion, I just move like that. Following from the council meeting on the 12th of October, I think several issues were raised. Firstly, as community leaders, we signed up to a code of conduct, which means that we should always consider our behaviour in public meetings. However, the main issue in this instance was the editing of the video footage. Whilst removing 10 seconds might not seem a lot, it does lead to the question what can and can't be edited and who decides. What we are trying to establish with this motion is a clear principle going forward, really. Whilst we did consider having caveats in the motion, it did begin to get messy. Hence, we believe the clearest and most transparent thing is to have no editing at all. Hence, I'd like to move the motion as printed on the agenda. Is that okay? I don't need to read all that out, do I, Chair? Thank you.
We need a seconder.
I'll second that, Chair. And I just want to say that whilst I understand the temptation of editing out behaviour in council meetings, which may bring the authority into disrepute, ultimately there's an onus on every single councillor in this meeting to uphold the code of conduct and behave in a way in which the ward residents expect them to. It's not the job of council officers, and it's certainly not a job of any elected member to decide what is or isn't, or what should or shouldn't be edited out of video or audio footage which has been recorded of council meetings. There are not two councillors in this authority who will have the same definitions on what is considered to be offensive to themselves. By editing out the footage, it creates many problems, not least because it breaks the original link posted out by the council's social media and that's shared out by residents across the district. But someone might try the link while the meeting is happening and then go back at a later date and then there's because the link's broken, they think that the footage has been completely removed if they're not willing to go into YouTube to actually look at whether it's still there or not on the council's YouTube profile. But the main problem for me is that residents will never know what is edited out of the council meetings if we're going down that route. And because of this, that's going to result in the loss of trust of those watching, because they don't know whether they're watching the live meeting, whether they're watching an edited version. And, you know, things can easily be taken out of context when you start editing videos, even if it's just a small snippet. Now, the aim of a policy to remove parts of a video so it doesn't bring the council into disrepute is an admirable one, but that can only be tackled by there being a policy that deters people from behaving in a way that people might consider to be offensive. And the way you deter people is by video recording the meetings and putting that behaviour on display so people are deterred from doing it. Now, this motion sets in stone what should have always been the case, in my opinion. It sets out that no footage will ever be edited by this authority, truly holding all of the councillors to account for their actions in these meetings. And I second this motion wholeheartedly, that we should never be editing any footage whatsoever of our council's meetings, subcommittees, and whatever else. Thanks, Chair.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Cornwell. Councillor Birkin.
Sorry, I've unmuted myself. Yes, I just want to agree with everything that's been said, and I just want to say to Councillor Alex Dale, that was your first meeting as a leader, and under your watch, 1, we've had no minutes of a meeting. 2, some of your councillors were disrespectful, and 3, your meeting got edited. And as being a leader, I don't think you've done very well as your first meeting. That's it.
Councillor Birkin.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Shipman just said and reminded us all it's the onus of councillors to mind their behaviour and to be respectful of other members. I think, unfortunately, that was sadly lacking during that meeting that we're talking about. But I believe as well it's the onus of the council to show complete and transparent report of the proceedings. And I don't think it's for any councillor or any officers to make the decision what should or should not be let available for the public to see. I understand, or I've been told, that the reason for the removal of offensive material is because that some people may feel offended by it, and also that YouTube might have cut it out of their repeating of our meetings. Again, that is not for anyone within the council, officers or members, however senior they may be, to make that decision. Unfortunately, I'm sure we've all seen, I know I have, all seen much worse on YouTube and Facebook. There seems to be a degeneration, some would say, into bad and offensive language. But again, that's not for us to make that decision. If I see something like that, then I stop watching that site, wherever it might be. So I think, again, this shows a lack of respect across the board for fellow councillors, and that bad behaviour should have been shown, and then for the public to make their mind up on it, not for anyone to take that decision. So again, I wholeheartedly support what Councillor Shipman and Councillor Barker are proposing with this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree. It's not for officers or any elected members of this council to decide what the public sees from the public part of a council meeting. You know, it's not open and transparent government to be cutting things out that we don't particularly like or wish hadn't have happened. It had happened. and the electorate has the right to see how their elected members are performing in the council chamber, what their attitude is, and how they behave. And councils up and down the country now record, and you can look at any number of them. I've got one example from Dorset about the protocol for filming and audio recording of public council meetings. And it quite explicitly says in there that those recording proceedings do not edit the film or record in a way that could lead to misrepresentation of the proceedings, which this has done. It's pretended something hasn't happened, or infringe the core values of the council. This includes refraining from editing an image or views expressed in a way that may ridicule or show lack of respect towards those being filmed or recorded. I think that's quite clear statement about what should be shown from one local authority. If we can't determine a set of principles for ourselves, we should look to other authorities about what they mean by open and transparent government. It's shameful that we've done that, and that recording should be put back into the public domain in its original state.
Thank you. Councillor Renwick.
I just think we have to ask ourselves, is it really in the public interest? And I don't really believe this council should be in a race to the bottom to be the worst of the YouTube they've ever seen. I completely disagree with this motion and I will vote against.
Thank you. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. I think I was asked directly, so just to respond to Councillor Cornwell's question, I don't think she could have been paying too much attention to the minutes of the last meeting, because my first meeting as leader of the council was back in July, and then we've had September as well. So the October meeting was not the first. I mean, in terms of the issues raised with the motion, I think we would all agree that transparency is very important. But the motion itself just isn't reasonable in its approach. I think we have to accept that in the sort of new age of digital meetings, we are seeing more mistakes being made, not just in council meetings, but across the board in business, also in Parliament as well. We're seeing mistakes like these being made. And we know that YouTube could have taken the whole video down. I think Councillor Birkin referred to them just clipping the video themselves. They wouldn't have done that. They would have taken the whole video down. And in which case that would have been a much worse state of affairs, because in terms of transparency, because the public wouldn't have been able to watch any of the meeting while they'd taken it down. I think it's entirely reasonable for the monitoring officer, as part of her role, to have taken the decision to do what she did, and we should allow her latitude to do so. I think particularly as only 10 seconds of the video was removed, and none of the debate was removed, not a single item or any discussion or any members' comments during the actual debate itself was removed, and nor were the indications of any members' votes removed from the meeting. Nothing of any substance in that meeting was removed. And I think we have to accept that there may be future occasions where a video may need to be edited. It's not just due to mistakes that are made, but there are examples where councillors, not necessarily this council, but where councillors have revealed confidential or sensitive information during the public section of the meeting inadvertently. What if, for example, a member here were to start referring to the experiences of a constituent and then name that person? Well, under data protection rules alone, surely it would be necessary and fair to that person to have the ability to edit out their name or any other details which would disclose who they were. I understand that Standards Committee are already beginning work on a protocol for the issue of video recordings of council meetings. And I think it's entirely appropriate to allow that committee to decide on a sensible and pragmatic way forward. And for these reasons, our group will be voting against the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I have a particular interest in this, seeing as 4 years ago I actually first brought this to the council to ask for meetings to be live streamed. I'm very, very concerned about Councillor Dale's comments that he's just made, because one of the key things that Councillor Thacker, when he took leadership of this council, and Councillor Dale supported at the time, was that we would be absolutely open and transparent. And there are I will sit here and there are times I've said things and I think, oh, I wish I'd said that differently, or I wish I'd not said that. And I think if every single one of us is completely truthful, we will all say exactly the same thing. The thing is, the public has an absolute right to see what we do, what we say, and how we react. And I think any kind of censorship is totally unacceptable. The point that Councillor Dale raised about things being said which shouldn't be, the chair is the one responsible for dictating the flow of the meeting, and the chair will stop that if that happens. That is the proper process. We passed this, we brought this in so that the public could see what happened in this council chamber. And I'm sorry, in no way, shape or form should we ever be editing. And in regard to YouTube taking the whole thing down, I've seen videos that contain language far, far worse than was actually said in this council chamber, and they have not been taken down. The only time YouTube takes things down is when there's a copyright infringement. And Councillor Renwick is shaking her head now. She supported transparency when it was working in her favour. So I'm sorry, she's really just turning on her heels now to try and take this back. I absolutely support the motion, and I'll be backing it fully.
I'd just like to reply, if I may. We're talking about a word that was.
There's no, Councillor Renwick shouldn't be speaking. She's already spoken, I believe. Chair?
I want to defend, make a point of order on.
Chair, she can give a personal explanation, Chair.
She's not doing that though, Councillor Foster.
I am.
Yes, she is.
Councillor Barker, do you wish to exercise your right to reply?
Already finished. I'll not prolong it. I think we've made the point. It is, like I said, we did consider caveats about the could do this, could do that, and then you'll end up with more reasons why you can edit it than one you can't. And I think the principle is that that video stays in its entirety, and it's up to people to make of it as they wish. So I'll just move to vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to do it by show of hands, or do you want to do it by poll?
Can we call for a recorded vote, please, Chair?
I'll second that.
Yeah, I'll go with that. How many do you need?
Three.
Three.
I'll agree to that again.
That's 4.
Sorry. We've got.
I'm happy to be on there.
We've had 3 councillors. We need to call the recorded vote. I will call out your names in turn. Please forgive me if I call out somebody who isn't here. I haven't necessarily got all the apologies. I will ask for, against, or abstain. Please, can you be clear which you are saying? Amy, Alan, are you okay? You ready?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Sarah.
P. Wright. I'm sorry for those. I'm doing it in reverse as previously. So Councillor P. Wright. No. Councillor B. Wright.
Not here.
Not here.
Councillor P. Winley. Councillor
No
Winley?
response.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
Councillor Welton.
Against.
Councillor Thacker.
Against.
Councillor Tate.
Against.
Councillor Stone. Nope.
He's had to leave.
Right. Councillor Shipman.
4.
Councillor Ruff.
Against.
Councillor Rouse.
4.
Councillor Rowe.
Against.
Councillor Ridgway.
For.
Councillor Renwick.
Against.
Councillor Reader.
For.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Potts. Councillor Potts.
Against.
Councillor Pickering.
For.
Councillor Parkin.
Against.
Councillor Morley. Councillor Morley. Councillor Lilly.
So what was Councillor Morley's vote?
I think he's trying to indicate with his hand.
For.
Councillor Morley for. Councillor Lilly.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
Against.
Councillor Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Kerry.
For.
Councillor Kenyon.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Against.
Councillor Huckabee.
Against.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Hill. Councillor Hill?
Disappeared.
No indication.
She's left, I think.
Okay.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
For.
Councillor Hall left. Councillor Gomez-Rini.
Against.
Councillor Fennell.
For.
Councillor Mark Foster.
Against.
Councillor Angelique Foster.
Against.
Councillor Emmons.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Dayton.
Against.
Councillor Dale.
Against.
Councillor Cupid.
Against.
Councillor Cornwall.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Clough.
Against.
Councillor Pat Bone.
Against.
Councillor K Bone.
Against.
Councillor Birkin.
For.
Councillor Barry. She's not.
Apologies.
Councillor Barker. Councillor Armitage.
Against.
Councillor Ancliffe. Against. Against.
Could I vote for, please? I missed my vote. I couldn't get the mute off quick enough.
Is that Councillor Winley?
It is, yes. Mine's for. Thank you.
Sarah, just while you're adding up, can you answer me question? When will we see the minutes of that meeting?
Yeah, my apologies, they're not here. It will either be at the extra meeting that Councillor Bell referred to in his comments, or it will be at your next scheduled meeting in February.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask when we do receive those minutes, will they be verbatim?
Minutes are a record of the meeting. They are not verbatim as to what was discussed.
Thank you.
So they will be the usual minutes type of minutes you receive.
Quite easy to get verbatim minutes from that meeting because we can view the video.
The result is 18 for with 28 against and no abstentions. The motion amended is defeated. Exclusion of public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following item of business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2, Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. May I have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you. We'll now vote. Can we have a show of...
No, there's no to vote on you.
Sorry? Show of hands, please.
Excuse me, what are we voting on?
Voting on here, I don't know what we're voting on.
The exclusion of public and press.
Well, I don't think we've ever voted on that before, have we?
Yes.
I thought it was a give.
No, we have voted on in the past, and also it is at this point that the public leave the recording, so it's good for them to see that you've actually voted on a motion to exclude them.
Right, I always thought that in the chamber, excuse me for my ignorance, but I always thought in the chamber, the chair says now the public go. We've never voted for it in the chamber as far as I remember.
I've seen it done both ways. It is a motion, a vote is appropriate.
Is there a consensus, members, that the public then be excluded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can Martin Derbyshire confirm when the live feed is finished?